Hi, let's talk definitions. We're going to start with the library catalog. So your teacher asks you to use the library catalog. What is she talking about? LL Bean? No, that's not the catalog. Vermont Country Store? Nope, that neither. No, the library catalog is a register or database that describes all the books in a collection, as well as ebooks, and in our case, streaming video. It's not a catalog like you get in the mail. You access it online, and I'm going to show you how. And it will tell you where the book is located if it's a physical book in the collection of a library, or it will give you information about how to access that work, ebook, if it's an ebook, online. Basically, it's what we have, where it's located, and how to get to it. Now, this does not include articles. It is books, ebooks, and in the case of Berkshire Community College, streaming video. So where you would go from the college's library page is you would click Helm. That's the library catalog. And this is the catalog that I'm describing. If you are used to public libraries and you go to use your public library, you're probably using the CW Mars library catalog system. It is different, but it has the same kind of features, a search box. And that's where you would search for whatever you're looking for. So if I typed in here something like liberal arts, and click it, it is searching Berkshire Community College in the Helm system, which is a consortium of all of the community colleges in Massachusetts, as well as a couple of state universities. And it will pull up as a result list books that we have, as well as ebooks, and as I mentioned, some videos. So if I go ahead and look for a print book, and I'm going to grab something right here, I could tell it's a print book because it's giving me a call number. And I see two libraries have it, including Berkshire Community College. If I click the title, there is a picture of the book. It's not going to give me the book. I will have to actually go to the library and look for it on the shelf. That's the location. But this is, the function of a catalog is it shows you how to get to a particular, in this case, print book, ebook, or it will also show you how to get to our streaming videos. To get into the online books, you may find that you have to sign in if you aren't already signed in or log in. That is basically a definition of the catalog. So next I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the word database and define that for you. Database is a searchable collection of information. And we've already kind of talked about the catalog as a database for books and ebooks, and in our case, streaming videos. In the case of articles, article databases are a searchable collection of all of the articles in all of the journals, magazines, and newspapers that we have. Each database contains thousands of articles, which you can search simultaneously. And where you find those are here, our A to Z database list, which we're going to describe a little further, a little more in depth further on in these modules. But we have over 134 databases, which is quite a lot. The materials that you will find in our databases include newspapers, and here's an example, New York Times. New York Times would be, of course, a national newspaper and a United States newspaper that has an international audience. You will also find local newspapers, for instance, the Springfield Republican, and the Berkshire Eagle, the Berkshire Eagle is kind of interesting because not only is it a local paper, but it is what they call indexed. It is picked up by other news indexing organizations and databases. LexisNexis is one of our databases that picks it up, and which gives it a national actual audience. So the Berkshire Eagle, while it is small, it is mighty, and it is kind of unique as a local paper in that it does have national exposure. So you'll find newspapers. Newspapers come out fairly frequently. They are totally appropriate for a paper, providing it isn't just scholarly resources that you need. The one thing about newspapers is the information in a newspaper is pretty immediate. When something happens, it usually shows up in the newspaper the day or 2 days later. In the case of magazines, it takes a little bit of time for an article to be written and the publisher to approve of it, and for it to be actually published and get onto the newsstands or online, and if it's only an online magazine. So magazines come out less frequently than newspapers. So the information in a magazine there's a delay to some extent. So if something exciting happened yesterday, you'll find it in a newspaper, but you're not going to find it in a magazine for perhaps a week or 2 weeks even. Magazines examples would be Time Magazine, or I've got some examples here, Smithsonian. Smithsonian is written to some extent by experts in the field, but it isn't fully scholarly in the way a journal is, and we'll talk about journals in a second. National Geographic is another example. Psychology Today, where psychologists do write in that, but it is written for a popular audience, which is another thing. Magazines get their funding from advertisements, so that it isn't completely unbiased, which is not to say that everything our journals are completely unbiased, but they at least purport to be unbiased. But in the case of magazines, there is definitely advertising and advertisers that fund that magazine along with the subscription and newsstand sales. So magazines are for the general public. Vogue magazine is another example, Town and Country, and archaeology. But a journal is different. A journal, many times you'll have an assignment where you are asked to only use scholarly journals. In a scholarly journal, the articles are written by experts in the field. It takes a while for those articles to be published. It could well be that somebody's doing, let's say, research on COVID, and it takes time to do research on a scientific or a medical phenomena. They may be examining a population group or some sort of demographics, and that can take time. That could take several years. So from the time the research begins to the time the particular article comes out in a scholarly journal can be 5, 6, 7 years. So the news, it isn't immediate. It is rather a in-depth study of some sort. So that is a very different type of resource than a magazine or a newspaper. Scholarly resources oftentimes include a summary of the article and then a methodology of how they went about the discovery process to come to the conclusions that they've come to. So journals are very specific. Usually you think of scientific journals like Journal of the American Medical Association or Journal of American Journal of Sociology, but there's other journals, like for instance the Historical Journal of Massachusetts, which is published over at Westfield State University. Again, it's a scholarly journal. So a little bit of definitions. I've described for you newspapers, magazines, journals, the differences between them, their uses depending on your needs as for your assignment. You may be able to use magazines and newspapers, or it could be that for a particular assignment you can only use journals because that is best for the assignment that you have. I've described databases, and I've talked to you a little bit about the catalog. So I hope that this helps you in terms of defining some of the terminology. Down below you'll see a link to a glossary which will include definitions to many of the resource terms that you run into, including terms like citation, bibliography, things that that you may not be familiar with. Use that glossary because it will define for you, give you definitions for terminology that you may run into when you are looking at your syllabus and trying to make sense of your assignment.